Alright gamers, it is officially the second half of the year, with July officially all good to go, and that means we have tons of games coming out in the later half of the summer, going into the fall, and of course the holidays. And one of the most anticipated games, of course, is Black Myth Wukong. This game is highly anticipated. I believe it is the #1 wishlist game currently on Steam right now. I could be wrong at the time of this recording, but last I checked, it was. And oh boy, is it looking to be like a pretty fun game. I mean, you could sum it up as just a generic action game if you wanted to, but just the setting and the graphics and the effects and the bosses that we've seen, they're looking pretty good. I'm definitely excited to try this game out. There have been just a lot of previews. I mean, people have been able to play this game at like Gamescom last year. They got to play it at the Summer's Game Fest this year. Not like just the general public, unfortunately, but there are some demos that are supposed to be available at things like TGS. I believe Gamescom is supposed to have one here later in August. And if it is available at TGS this upcoming end of September, I am 100% going to be playing it and checking it out. But there seems to just be a lot of good saying about it, where people are saying, it's a good game. It looks like it's fun. It plays really well. There hasn't been any real controversial stuff except for a particular IGN article, which we'll get into later. But overall, this is just looking like a really cool action game. Kind of takes you back to the kind of mid-2000s, I would say, almost, for some of those games. It just looks like a lot of fun. I love the setting. The setting looks really cool. Plus, we get to play as like a monkey god, essentially. So, I mean, what more can you say about that? But there is one unfortunate thing, I guess I should say, is that it is releasing for all platforms, PS5, PC, and Xbox, aside from the Switch, because obviously the Switch can never handle a game like this. But Xbox has been delayed, and we'll get into why I think that is, because there were some comments from an Xbox head somewhere who said we can't talk about deals from other companies with the current makers of this game and everything like that. And the more I dug into it a little bit, I was just like, I don't think there's anything to do with that. It actually is a pretty quite simple why they most likely delayed it, and we'll get into that in a bit. But Lemon, I want to get your personal thoughts. What are your overall thoughts on this? I mean, I'm sure you've seen some of the gameplay and everything like that. I mean, it definitely looks really cool. For those of you who have never seen it before, we'll have some playing as Lemon talks. Obviously, it'll be muted and everything. But just what are your overall thoughts on the game? What are you thinking?
I have high hopes for it.
Requirements, we can then kind of take a look at how well it could potentially perform on something like a PS5, an Xbox Series X, an Xbox Series S, a Switch, you name it, right? So we go down here and we take a look at the recommended and minimum requirements. It is asking for 16 gigabytes of RAM. Huh? Now, PC these days, that's not that big of an ask in my personal opinion. Most gamers these days have between 16 to 32 gigabytes of RAM to use on their system. I highly recommend 32 gigabytes, but that's neither here nor there. What is interesting, though, when I do look at the graphics, before we continue on with the RAM talk real quick, is that the recommended graphics is a 2060 NVIDIA or an AMD 5700 XT. That's not that, like, huge of a jump of a graphics card, in my personal opinion, and yet it's asking for a lot of RAM. So that's Lemon, I'll let you get into the technical stuff a little bit, because he's a programmer, for anyone who doesn't know, so he definitely knows a little bit more about this. But when we take it back to the Series S, the Series X, and the PlayStation 5, Series X and PlayStation 5, as we know, have 16 gigabytes of RAM, but realistically it's around 12, maybe 13 gigabytes, because a couple of gigabytes of RAM have to be used for the system itself, the way that the actual menus work and everything within the system. That's normal console stuff right there. The S, on the other hand, only has 10 gigabytes, and which means 2 of those have to be used for, again, the system itself, which means there's only 8 gigabytes of RAM for games, essentially, maybe even 7, depending on the game, essentially. And so you take 16 gigabytes of memory minimum that is asked for on a PC, which overall the rest of the requirements are not that big. I mean, i5 8400, a GTX 1060, like none of that is crazy in the PC realm. And the S is clearly stronger in terms of some of those aspects, in terms of like the 1060 last I checked. It might be around the same. I could be completely wrong on that. But regardless, 16 gigabytes is definitely the higher part. So when I hear that Black Myth Wukong is delayed on the Xbox for a later date, and a lot of people are saying, no, there's no way it's not the S, because the Xbox didn't come out and say it was because of that, or the developers of this game haven't. It's like, look at the requirements. Just look at the very basic requirements of the game itself, and it literally says 16 gigabytes, And when you have a console that only has 8 usable for games, I'm going to say it right now. It's because of the S. It is because of the S. And another thing that makes me not believe anything about, Sony got an exclusive deal at the last second or anything like that is because it's releasing on PC. If they got some last minute exclusive deal thing or whatever, why would the game be releasing on PC still at the exact same time? That doesn't make any sense, right? So it has to be the S. There's no other way around it because, again, just the memory, the VRAM right there itself, 8 gigabytes, and it requires 16 at minimum. I could say that. Now, I will say 16 gigabytes could be kind of worrisome based on how programming works, which we'll let Lemon here talk about in a second. But overall, I'm definitely thinking it is the S overall. But Lemon, as you are a technical expert when it comes to programming and everything, let us know your thoughts. What are your all opinions on this?
I wouldn't say expert. I'm just mildly informed.
He's a coder, guys. He's a programmer, so.
Yeah, so you pretty much hit the nail on the head with the 16 gigs of RAM. I will say it is, as you mentioned, weirdly high compared to the rest of the requirements. Generally speaking, when you have huge memory requirements like that versus your GPU and CPU, that means something is up. So while you're going over that, I was kind of thinking, what's the engine? And it's Unreal 5, which is already a much beleaguered, for lack of a better phrase, engine. It's just not, it's very much stumbled out of the gate. So I'm wondering if that might be cause of that. Because so far Unreal Engine 5 has just been really brutal on everything, console, PC, whatever.
Oh, it has been. It's been absolutely brutal everywhere, essentially.
So the memory requirements being that high, maybe it's because of that. It might also just be that there's issues with the game itself. I always remember back, there's a fun story about Donkey Kong 64, right? And I think it was like on a Digital Gaming. I always thought it was really interesting just because I can totally see something like this happening. The issue was they had this really weird memory leak that they could never find, and the only way to solve it was to sell the game with the expansion pack. And so that's why all DK64 games came with the expansion pack. It was required. The rest of the game didn't need it. So they got effectively double the RAM to make headroom for the memory that they had. And so I'm wondering maybe that's happening here too with the 16 gigs of RAM, because it's not unusual. I feel like that's kind of the quote unquote base for most PCs at this point. And both PS5 and Series X have 16 gigs of RAM. It's kind of high for a minimum.
Right.
I feel like most of the time minimum is closer to 8.
Right.
And you might be able to sneak by with closer to 12. I don't really know if Steam would block you from trying to at least start the game, or if the devs would try stopping you. But just says 16 gigs, just very much a red flag in my mind.
Right. But for example, I have the Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3, right? Regardless of what you think of the game, the minimum memory requirements is 8 gigabytes of RAM, where recommended is 16. Right. So it kind of goes back to what you said about most games only having a minimum of 8. Compared to having, 16. So, and I'm even looking at some newer ones right now, like Spider-Man, which I know was a 2018 game, but was brought over to PC. That minimum is 8 gigabytes of RAM, 16 is recommended. So,
well, the S is, we've already seen in the past that the forcing developers to put games on the S is already hindering developers, and we saw it with Baldur's Gate 3, and we're just going to keep seeing it. So I think this might just be another case of that. I really do think it's probably that. I don't think there's any sort of developer, timed exclusives or anything. As you mentioned, it's coming to PC. Though Sony has shown that they really don't care about PC in terms of holding on to it in terms of exclusivity. It would not surprise me in the future that we see a quote-unquote console exclusive game being shown on their trailers, like the console exclusive game, play it first on PlayStation and releases on Steam. I think we're going to start seeing a lot more from Sony.
Well, yeah, Sony has stated that all their live service stuff is going PC day and date, but their more cinematic first, single player stuff, that is all going to be PlayStation first and then eventually released on PC. Even then, that could change even more, though. That could easily change even more, though.
I'm thinking more in the case of like Final Fantasy VII Part 3 might come to PC day and date with
that's hard. That is hard to say, and I know we're going completely off topic from Black Myth Wukong, but that would more come down to whatever contract they've made, because it's clear that the remake trilogy is under that contract was made long ago, right? And Square themselves have even come in and had said that, they obviously want to be doing all this multi-platform stuff, but Square, even in the past, even if there's not some exclusive, PlayStation thing or whatever, or even on the Switch, because little fun tip, actually, there are way more Square Enix exclusive on the Switch than there are on PlayStation. PlayStation gets the bigger, flashier ones, but I digress. But when it comes to Square and just bringing it over to other platforms, they really prefer to put it somewhere first and then port it, right? There are some exceptions to the rule where some games are behind contracts and everything, but regardless, Square's never had a real stellar record of making sure something releases on multiple platforms, which is why when I saw that they're going to be doing this, which I know makes sense financially and everything, I'm just like, okay, you've got to make sure you've got both a PlayStation 5, an Xbox Series X, and a PC version going forward, even though it's not going to sell on Xbox. I'm sorry, it's just the way it is. Going back to the remake trilogy or remake part 3, because obviously Rebirth has been out now, it'll be interesting to see if it does go PC day and date, even with something like Final Fantasy 16, which, there is a PC port coming, but they have taken a long time to make that PC port, which makes me wonder if that had been a day and date thing, that means 16 still would not be out, right?
Yeah.
So, I don't know. We'll have to wait and see what's going to happen there in terms of all of that stuff. But getting back over to the Black Myth Wukong thing, it's interesting. A lot of people don't consider memory, because I've seen a lot of things where just like, so what? This game ran on 8 gigabytes, or this did this, or this, and it's just like, but when a game requires minimum of 16 gigabytes, like that right there should be telling you that if a console can't get it, it's because it has such low memory. I mean, why else do you think that there's not as many games going on to the previous gen consoles, right? Why isn't Black Myth Wukong going on to PlayStation 4 and Xbox One? Clearly can't handle it, obviously, and there are a multitude of reasons for that. But I'm looking at a game that the Immortals of Avium, it was like one of those EA first games or whatever, where they help out developers who are a much smaller team and everything like that. And minimum requirements for that game on PC is 16. It says 16 dual channel gigabytes of RAM. Now, if I do remember correctly, though, Immortals of Avium, regardless of how it didn't do very well, unfortunately, it did release on the S to my knowledge, and that was also
right now.
Right. And that game is also made with the Unreal Engine 5, right? So it begs the question is, was EA stepping in to help maybe with some of this Unreal Engine 5 with some developers? What's the difference in the team size between someone making the Black Myth Wukong currently right now compared to Immortals of Avium? Do the developers of Immortals of Avium have more experience working on console games? Because as we know, it is being made by Game Science and published by Game Science, right? And we know Game Science has a history of doing some mobile games. They had like some top mobile games back in like 2017, and they're taking all that money that they've earned to make and go into the console space. But they clearly have not made a console game beforehand until now. So it wouldn't surprise me if this whole minimum requirements and everything that we see here is a main reason why it's not able to go to something like the S as fast compared to something like Immortals of Avium. But regardless, like we stated before here, and what Lemon has said when it comes to memory and everything, that right there should be telling already when it comes to the game itself, and just why 8 gigabytes is not that much anymore. I mean, it's like going back to like the PlayStation 2 days and all that stuff, where we had those memory cards, and didn't those memory cards at max hit like 200 megabytes, I think, or something like that? It's been a long time.
8 megabytes.
8 megabytes. I was way off on that. Yeah, 8 megabytes on these little dinky memory cards. And now we're in the day and age of 16 to 32 gigabytes. So that should tell you something right there. It is what it is. But any last minute thoughts on this, Lemon, before we go on to the next stuff?
Just that I'm looking forward to it, though I'm expecting it to be a janky mess when it comes out.
We'll definitely have to see. Yeah, I mean, again, based on the previews that we've been seeing, and I know previews are always very in their own little space and everything, but a lot of people have been saying it's playing really well. And if I get the chance to play it at Tokyo Game Show, 100% will be recording as much as I can, if I'm allowed to at least. Definitely talking about it. And if it's that way and it goes on to the final release, I believe they even said they're going to have a demo before the release, but I could be wrong on that. We'll have to wait and see. But this game does release in August, so me playing at TGS isn't going to make a difference. But we'll have to wait and see here. So, and one little comment that we did get here in the chat before we move on is from Flock. He's a constant returner here. I don't know about that after the meltdown people had about the PSN account linking. Sony might not push things to PC as readily after that. I mean, it depends on the game. I mean, obviously, we know that their live service stuff is going to go to PC day and date. We know that for a fact. Helldivers 2, which is funny enough going to be our next topic in a few minutes here, did very well. 12 million copies sold. That's nothing to flock at right there. Yes, it was $40 compared to 70, but regardless, 12 million, that's still a very good sale right there. But if you look at the Steam numbers, funny enough, when it came to the Steam numbers and everything, if we go back and we say 1 year, like that, actually, let's do 6 months because it goes there. So they have this little A here saying the account linking shenanigans that they even mark it right here, right? So this was on May 4th, May 3rd, give or take. You can tell that the numbers were already starting to trend down a little bit for Helldivers 2 here. So the whole account thing didn't really change anything. People still jumped on, played the game. I mean, look at this here, right? 115,000 people playing the game. And then a week later, 88, right? 90, 95, right? So yes, it was going down, but it was already trending downwards way before this account linking stuff even happened. So, you know, and then here, jumps up to 91,000 again, but now it's obviously starting to jump down. Again, we're going to talk about this in a little bit here because there's a bunch of stuff when it comes to this that we've got some thoughts on. But regardless, Sony will be doing their stuff to PC for the while. But anyway, regardless, I'm definitely excited for Black Myth Wukong. I think it's going to be a really fun game. Can't wait to try it out at the end of August. We'll definitely be making some guides on it and everything like that. So it definitely looks looking good. Xbox players, unfortunately, you're going to have to wait. But if you're, you know, if you have a PC, just grab it over on PC. Because like I said, most people on PC have 16 gigabytes of RAM in their systems right now. Unless maybe you've got a system that's like 10 plus years old. And I know updating is not exactly the easiest thing because PC parts are always expensive and everything like that. But as I've always said when it comes to most games, wait for reviews to come out. Do your own research and everything. See if it's something that you like. And if there happens to be a demo, great, try it out. If not, then, you know, see if you like it. If not, wait for a sale or just don't buy it. So that's how this whole industry works and everything. So, but anyway, guys, let us know your thoughts when it comes to Black Myth Wukong, because I don't know about you, but I'm super excited.